2, 1. We can go now.
Okay, Brian, we're gonna go live now.
Good evening. Welcome to the Costa Mesa Planning Commission meeting for Monday, October 26th. I call the meeting to order, and I will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. If all commissioners would please mute your microphones. And ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Julie, please call the roll.
Chair Jericho,
Here.
Vice Chair Harlan,
Here.
Commissioner Colbert,
Present.
Commissioner Perkins,
Here.
Commissioner Russell,
Here.
Commissioner Torje is absent, Commissioner Zick,
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. For some housekeeping announcements, in order to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 virus, Governor Newsom has issued executive orders that temporarily suspend requirements of the Brown Act, which allows Planning Commission members to attend Planning Commission meetings telephonically. Given the health risks associated with COVID-19, the City Council chambers will be closed to the public until further notice. If you would like to participate in tonight's meeting, you can participate via the following options. You are strongly encouraged to observe the Planning Commission meetings live on Costa Mesa TV at Spectrum Channel 3 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, or online at youtube.com/Costa Mesa TV. You can also participate via Zoom by following the instruction on tonight's agenda, which you can find online at the city's website. During the public comment portion of the meeting, if you are participating via Zoom webinar, use the raise hand function located in the participants window and wait for city staff to announce your name and unmute your line when it is your turn to speak. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise directed. You can also participate in tonight's meeting via telephone by dialing 1-669-900-6833. The webinar ID is 960-6037-9921, and the passcode is 595-958. During the public comment period, if you are participating by telephone, press *9 to add yourself to the queue and wait for city staff to announce your name, phone number, and then press *6 to unmute your line when it is your turn to speak. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise directed. So with that, that will bring us to the public comments portion of our agenda this evening. Public comments will be heard at this time on items that are not listed on the agenda but are within our jurisdiction. I will open public comment. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of the screen. If you are joining the meeting on your telephone and would like to speak, please press *9 at this time. Julie, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, we do. So Wendy Leese, I'm going to allow you to talk and do your public comments.
Okay, unmute. Okay, good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thank you for your service. I'm calling because the issue of the LED signs at Triangle Square keeps me up at night. Because COVID, it's been dragging on probably longer, and it's frustrating not to be there in person in the council chambers to be able to articulate the many reasons why I do not believe these signs are a good idea. We have collected more than 500 signature people on the change.org. Not all of them live in Costa Mesa, but 500 is a lot. And not everybody is opposed. I think probably most people are. I haven't actually done the the statistical analysis. The owner did have a kind of a meager outreach, a Zoom meeting, but it wasn't really a two-way discussion. I wasn't able to attend, but it was not as it really didn't reach out into the community as we hoped that they would be, to get a better pulse of how residents feel about this project. In closing, I talked to a resident of 19th Street, longtime business owner on 19th Street, and they didn't know about it. And so they are concerned, and they're going to be passing a paper petition because they're not online. But I know it's not before you tonight, but I just want to keep you in the loop that there are many of us that really don't want this electrical parade, so to speak, Las Vegas type, with third-party advertising to be in kind of our downtown area. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Lees. Julia, or any other?
Yes, Cynthia McDonald will be next, and I'll allow you to talk.
Good evening, commissioners. So a few weeks ago, I was one of the meager few who participated in that Zoom call for the triangle LED signs. And as Wendy said, this was supposed to be an outreach meeting to the public, but it was more of an attempt to silence the community. The public had to submit their questions in writing. At no time when I was on the call were we allowed to speak. We were not allowed to see each other's questions or use the chat feature. The moderator read the questions. My questions were not read verbatim. Rather, she read her interpretation of them, which was the questions they wanted to answer, not the ones I asked. So I called them out on it, and they said they would contact me, but that hasn't happened. My point is this: when the applicant brings the project back to you and tells you they've done outreach, you need to know they have not. So while I've got your ear, here are some of my issues with the project. Besides the obvious visual pollution, the biggest issue I have is safety. This is an area that already has quite a few accidents. Motorists who come out of a ditch at the end of the 55 will be met with a huge digital sign that changes every 8 seconds or so. Pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists will be more at risk because of distracted drivers. There is research that shows digital billboards are a threat to safety along busy streets, and they increase crash rates. Research on digital signage concludes they are inappropriate where exits, merges, turns, different speed zones, and especially when coming out of a tunnel. So we don't have a tunnel here, but we have a ditch, which is just as bad. Another issue I have is with the development agreement. The residents of Costa Mesa will have to live with this signage for the 30-year term of the agreement, but we have to wait 3 years before maybe, just maybe, we see 25% of the revenue from third-party advertising. I say maybe because who knows if there will be any third-party advertisers. So this may never benefit the residents who have to live with the long-lasting impacts. And if they do sell advertising space, who controls the content? Not the residents. So it could be for businesses in Newport. It could be for political signage because we don't have enough political signs in Costa Mesa, do we? It could be for pot shops in Santa Ana. We have no control, but we're forced to suffer with whatever the applicant decides. Finally, this type of signage sets a precedent for every other part of town. The time to stop it is now. Thanks for your time and stay safe.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Ms. Colgan, any other public comments?
Yes, we have Katie Arthur. I will allow you to talk now.
Hello, commissioners. This is Katie Arthur. Thank you for your service. I am also calling to speak regarding the proposed electronic billboards at Triangle Square. I've contacted most of you, or all of you, I suppose, previously on this topic. But I'm reaching out tonight because as Wendy and Cynthia have alluded or have spoken to, I'm calling specifically about the sham outreach that the third-party consultant, which was hired by the applicant, has done with the community. Let me provide some more detail. It's very clear that the applicant, and I know this because some of the city council members have told me, that the applicant was advised to do better and more community outreach. Since that time, I'm aware of a third-party consulting company. I've spoken to the principal of that company that's been hired by the applicant, and they conducted a survey. That's the first thing I'm aware of that they've done. The survey was a complete sham because we were only allowed to answer positively to the questions. We weren't allowed to provide any negative feedback, any feedback that we didn't want the signs, that we were opposed to third-party advertising, that we felt that they would be dangerous. A question would be written sort of like this: how much do you really like this sign? It's really great, you're super excited, or you would like to see more signs. That's sort of the type of questions that were on the survey. Secondly, as with Cynthia, I was on the recent Zoom call, which they conducted, which was also a sham. As Cynthia's indicated, they did not allow us to see who else was on the call. As Cynthia indicated, they misread every one of my submitted questions, and their outreach thus far has been wholly inadequate. It's clear to me that the owner does not really want feedback from the residents about how we feel about these electronic signs at Triangle and turning Triangle into one big giant billboard. Wendy Leese mentioned that we've collected over 500 signatures opposing these signs. And for those of you who might not be aware, when this came up 10 years ago, we collected well over 1,000 signatures, but it's very difficult to get more signatures, as I'm sure you can appreciate now, given COVID. So let me be clear. We do not want to turn Triangle into a billboard. Under no circumstances do we want third-party advertising. These signs are unsafe. I've submitted significant scientific evidence to support this point. They will look tacky. We don't want to turn Triangle Square into Times Square. There's ample evidence that these billboards will result in decreased property values for the homes and the businesses surrounding this area. Further, it will set a very bad—
Mr. Chairman, if Ms. Arthur can wrap it up, her time is up.
It will set a very bad precedent. And I'm sure we're going to be speaking about this again, but let me reiterate, we do not want to turn Triangle Square into a billboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur. Are there any other callers, Julie?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Caller and user 1, I'm going to allow you to speak.
Yes, I want to agree with the previous speakers regarding Triangle Square. We went through this once in 2010. It was obvious that citywide, and especially the east side, did not want the LED type of Vegas signs. And I must say that the new owner, the Mateen family, are coming back with bigger and even larger signs and expectations. That Triangle Square is not prosperous is not the fault of the community, and we shouldn't be having to have the liability of these huge Las Vegas type signs affect property values in the area. As they already said, these are third-party advertising. We have no control over it. That the Mateen family donated like $20,000 to a political campaign, I'm sorry, they just aren't going to get the bang for the buck they thought they were going to do on the back of the residents. The survey that they did was really pitiful. And if they want to save any money, they would get a new PR company because this was done poorly. It was like trying to put more frosting on a cupcake. And you can't make chicken salad out of chicken substance. So follow the residents of what they need and what they want in their community, how it's going to affect their property values and their everyday lives. These signs flashing every 6 seconds during the day and every 8 seconds during the night, flashing, blinking, moving, color changing messages. It just isn't what Costa Mesa needs or wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Any more callers?
Yes, I'm going to allow Herb Nadel to talk. If Herb Nadel can talk now.
Yeah, Mr. Nadel, you need to unmute yourself, sir.
I apologize.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Good evening, commissioners. Herb Natal, Eastside, Costa Mesa. I wanted to also say that I oppose the plan for this 2,600 square feet of electric lighting signage with a third-party advertising as proposed at Triangle Square. To be honest, I'm frankly surprised that this is even being considered, because the revenue that would be generated would likely be so nominal, and Costa Mesa wouldn't see this money for about 3 years. To even consider third-party advertising with changeable ads changing every 8 seconds is really a bad idea. From a safety point of view, pedestrians, cyclists, motorists would be more at risk because of distracted drivers. It would also be very difficult to control the digital billboard content. We all want the Triangle to be successful, but not by selling changeable third-party ads on a gigantic LED billboard. This might make the owner of the Triangle a lot of money, but who really wants Costa Mesa to resemble Times Square? I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Julie, any others?
Next, we have James. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi. So my name is James. I'm an Eastside resident, and my question is directly related to Harlan in regards to why he is for the signs on Triangle Square when
So James, what I need you to do is this isn't a Q&A directly of commissioners, so you can please provide your comments. You have 3 minutes, but this isn't a Q&A.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When so many people have spoken out against the signs on Triangle Square, quoting that it is a massive distraction, having reports that it's a massive distraction, I'm just curious why there's been so much just not visiting or anything else of the residents of Costa Mesa, not hearing them and not passing any type of thing to try to hear that no one wants this, shy of maybe 3 people. And that's it. There's my 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. Julie, any other speakers in public comment?
Yes, next we have Cindy Nayland. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Good evening, commissioners. I hope you can hear me. My name is Cindy Nayland, and my husband and I have been Costa Mesa residents and Eastsiders since 1996. I'm here this evening to speak against the lighting at Triangle Square. This is an issue that we've been working against for approximately 10 years when it first came up. I'm here to express some concerns that we have regarding the proposed 2,000 plus square feet of LED signage. Our main concerns, which are typical of most of the residents, are number one, quality of life and the right to peaceful enjoyment. We know that the quality of life will be affected by this high and intense lighting being admitted into our neighborhoods and into our living rooms. Property values, we worry about that. In speaking with local realtors over the past few days, it's no doubt that the property values will be affected, especially on the east side. And then we're concerned about safety. We worry about the distracting, revolving advertisements at what is designated as one of the busiest intersections in Orange County. We're also concerned about the outreach to the neighborhood, which to date seems to be fairly minimal. We also worry that this is being rushed through during a time when we're all still worried about caring for our families and our children and our jobs, and we're not focusing on current city issues. We don't have the energy for that right now. We're also worried about the content of advertising. In the past, in driving to work from my home, I've been privy to some pretty seemly advertising at various bus stops. And so it doesn't seem like that can be controlled too easily. And I'm also concerned that we would be setting a precedence that we might not be able to undo in the future. All of these concerns should be responsibly and thoughtfully considered by you, the elected officials who were elected to represent the residents of Costa Mesa. And we would hope that you put the residents' concerns over any political or monetary prospects, and especially put the residents' concerns over any developers, especially an out-of-city developer. This property over the years has proven that it's not quite a good fit for the city, and it seems that we're still trying to make it work no matter what the cost is. And now it seems the cost is going to be at the residents' expense. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any additional public comments, Julie?
None at this time.
Okay, I will then close public comments. And this brings us to Planning Commissioner comments. It's time for commissioners to provide comments. And so what, commissioners, when I call your name, please unmute yourself, and we'll begin with Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I originally did not have any comments for tonight other than to say it's good to see everybody. But in light of public comment, I want to give a little bit of feedback, certainly acknowledge that there are members of the community that have expressed some concerns. Of course, the project they're expressing concerns about is not in front of us tonight, so my comments are not about the project per se, but are about the topic of community outreach. You know, when somebody undertakes community outreach, they could be doing it for a number of different reasons. They could be undertaking it for a number of different reasons. And if you don't know what those reasons are, then the lack of, say, managing of expectations is going to create problems. Somebody may be conducting community outreach to genuinely get input, feedback, see what people think. Some people might be testing the waters. They've got an idea and they just want to see, you know, does the thing even float? Some people might be undertaking community outreach with the idea towards negotiating. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing 10 of these. What do you guys think? Nah, 10's too many. We like 7. And so there's sort of like in a way, a kind of a negotiation, kind of a sizing up of a project. That could be a reason why somebody might do community outreach. Negotiating would be another reason. Selling. Sometimes you might think community outreach means they're going to take my opinion and they're going to do something with it, but maybe their reason for having the community outreach is to sell you on what they've already determined and decided. You know, nobody likes a surprise, so the idea of community outreach is good. It helps take the edge off surprise. But worse than that, nobody likes to be brought into what they think is a decision-making process, only to find out that the decision is made and they're simply being told what it was. Now, I can point to a couple of recent examples of applicants who did community outreach that I feel like were constructive, were beneficial to the applicant and to the community because of their approach to the community outreach. The Education First project over on Bear Street, the Vanguard master plan effort. In both cases, there was what I perceived to be a genuine desire by the applicant to understand what the public felt about the project, to get input, to listen, to change, to compromise. And by the way, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street, because sometimes what an applicant wants to do or needs to do based on their business or their objectives, maybe there are aspects of that that the public needs to kind of absorb and go, well, okay, maybe on balance, what you're doing is good and there's some downsides. But again, if community outreach is undertaken with the idea that we know what we want to do and we're kind of trying to just tell you about it, that can feel frustrating to somebody who maybe thought the purpose of the community outreach was to get their opinion so that things could change. So I don't know what this applicant has in mind with their purpose. I've not met with them.
So Mr. Zick, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't want you talking about the applicant relative to the public comments that came up, because from my view, you're already dancing on the chalk line. So I would rather you not bring it up, and we get your point. But I don't want to talk about the specific applicant was mentioned during public comment tonight because it's not before us.
That'll be it for my comments.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Perkins.
Great. Thank you so much again. Good to see everyone. I hope everyone is safe tonight. I had, again, like Commissioner Zick, I had no prepared comments. I just wanted to say that I appreciate how much effort it takes to come to make public comments here at the meeting, and want to assure folks that your comments are heard and are being listened to. And I really appreciate the public engagement. So thank you very much, and have a good evening, and stay safe, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Perkins. Commissioner Russell.
Yes, I just want to quickly acknowledge that our neighbors in North County have been evacuated. We have firefighters that have already been injured. And just to let everyone know that, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with all of the people involved with the two large fires going on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. Commissioner Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to acknowledge that we're 8 days out from the November election, and just to remind everyone to vote and do it safely. Cast your ballots via mail or however you decide to do it. Voting is only one way in which we can engage in democracy, and I think that, you know, it's important that we engage and do it safely to ensure that we not only think about the top of the ballot, but also all those things that impact us locally here as well. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just wanted to thank the public for coming out and speaking tonight on an issue which I know is of great importance, especially to those in the East Side. And thank you for sharing your concerns. We'll certainly be considering that when the item ultimately comes before Planning Commission. Secondly, as to Commissioner Russell's comments on the fires in the north, I just wanted to express my concern for everybody's safety up there, and in particular wanted to note that Costa Mesa Fire and Rescue has an engine that's already been deployed. So we are assisting with that, and hopeful for everybody's safe return. And then lastly, as Commissioner Colbert had just mentioned, yes, November 3rd is quickly approaching, and I just wanted to remind everyone that we have 5 ballot drop box locations in the city that have been open since the 5th, and we have 7 vote center locations that will be open starting on October 30th. In fact, there are going to be 2 drive-through ballot options. One's at City Hall and the other's at the Senior Center. So I encourage everybody to exercise their right to vote this election season. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chair. I just want to echo Commissioner Russell and the Vice Chair's comments regarding the fires. I have family members who live up in the Foothill Ranch area who have a home up there, and we're quite worried and are waiting to see what happens. I particularly want to comment and ask for the prayers of the 2 Orange County Fire Authority hand crew members who sustained critical burns today fighting the fire. Both are in critical condition. So they were out there fighting that fire literally hand to hand, and those boys were injured pretty badly. So I want to pray for their full recovery. And then just commenting on the vote, this is a really critically important election. We have obviously the city council elections in the city. We have an important ballot measure on the city ballot and several state propositions. So very important to participate, to study up, understand what you're voting for, and make sure you do vote, and then utilize all the means that you are available to you to deliver your ballot, whether it be by the secure drop boxes, hand it into the registrar's office, or mail it in. Just make sure you get it in by November 3rd. So with that, that will take us to public hearings. And Julie, will you please read public hearing item number 1?
Public hearing item number 1, planning application 20-13 for a temporary conditional use permit for used motor car sales with outdoor display and a storage on temporary basis located at 2750 Bristol Street. Please note that 2 public comments have been received on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record. This is a call to report any ex parte communications.
All right, and thank you, Ms. Colgan. And before we report on ex parte communications, I need to recuse myself from this item as I live within 500 feet of the subject property. So I will be stepping away and handing the dais to Vice Chair Harlan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, any ex parte communications, please raise your hands. Okay, see Commissioner Zick, Commissioner Russell, Commissioner Colbert. Okay. Okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lee. Floor is yours for staff presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, Commissioner Perkins, did you have your hand up also? Okay. Okay, Mr. Lee, floor is yours.
Good evening.
Sorry, Mel, just 1 second, please. If Vice Chair Harlan, if the commissioners can please state though what kind of ex parte communications they had for the record, please.
Of course. So let's start with Commissioner Russell.
I had a phone call with the applicant's representative this morning.
Okay. Commissioner Colbert.
I spoke with the applicant representative on Friday.
All right. Commissioner Perkins.
Received a call and an email from the applicant's representative.
Okay. Commissioner Zick.
I have exchanged a couple of emails with Coralie Newman.
All right. Okay. Mr. Lee, now the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. Can everybody hear me, and can everybody see the screen share? So we good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The request that's before you this evening is a temporary conditional use permit, and it is for an auto sales use called Luxury Auto Lounge. The subject property is located on 2750 Bristol Street. This is the site of the former South Pacific Car Wash that closed several years back. And also adjoining the property at 2770 Bristol Street is a oil change facility that also closed several years back. The zoning of the property is C1, local business district. And as you can see in this zoning map exhibit, the property is abutting commercial uses and is also separated across Bristol Street by commercial uses, as well as the freeway abutting the site to the east. Here are some photographs of the subject property. This is showing the old car wash building, which is being used as an office space. And basically what was the area where the vehicles used to be staged for the car wash and also for the oil change facility is now being used for display purposes of vehicles for sale. Here's a diagram of the site. The vehicles that you see outlined in pink are the display spaces, and in yellow is the customer parking spaces, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later in this presentation. So as I mentioned, this is actually a temporary use, temporary in that this past Thursday, the zoning administrator approved a new development project for this site that would involve the construction of a 2-story motor vehicle body shop facility. In the interim, the property owner leased the property to Luxury Auto Lounge as an interim use while the development was going through the entitlement process, and shortly we'll be going through a building permit plan check process. So for all intents and purposes, the Luxury Auto Lounge is a temporary use. The applicant has stated that once building permits have been obtained, and once again, the entitlements were approved this past Thursday, they do intend to remove the vehicles and demolish all of the existing on-site improvements in order to construct this new development project. So in an interesting set of circumstances, when the applicant leased the site to Luxury Auto Lounge, they were not aware of the city's requirement for a conditional use permit. And basically what our zoning code indicates is that if you have a motor vehicle sales with more than one outdoor display space, that automatically triggers the conditional use permit requirement. They have over 40 vehicles in storage and on display at the site. And so basically our code enforcement division informed them of the need to come in and apply for the conditional use permit, which they have, which is why this is before you this evening. And this also is why the use is currently operating without the conditional use permit entitlement in process. Staff has incorporated a condition of approval number 2, that reflects that this is in fact a temporary or interim use, and that basically this approval is valid for 1 year, in which time the applicant indicates that will be more than enough time for them to obtain the necessary permits and begin the demolition and construction process for the new development. So for this interim use, we did incorporate our typical conditions of approval for motor vehicle sales, in that the vehicles, our employees will be required to park their vehicles on site. As you saw in the site plan, they also have a designated area for customer parking. They do indicate in their application that their business is primarily through internet sales. In other words, it's not a drive-in type of business where you can drive in and look at the cars on the lot. It's by appointment only. So because of that, they would only have a few employees and a few customers on site at any given time. Also, we've indicated our standard condition of approval that vehicles that are driven around for tests not be through residential neighborhoods. And also our standard condition of approval with regards to the auto dealerships on Harbor Boulevard also specifies there be no outdoor speakers. And of course, our standard condition of approval that the business will be conducted in a manner to ensure the quiet enjoyment of the surrounding properties. And the applicant has also indicated that there are no transport vehicles that will be delivering vehicles to the site. Basically, the cars are picked up by individuals and driven to the site. And even despite the fact that there are no transport trucks, similar to the condition of approval we created for the Audi dealership, we just specified that there be no loading or unloading of vehicles directly on Bristol Street. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find that the project is exempt from the provisions of CEQA in accordance with Class 1 for existing facilities, and approve Planning Application 20-13, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation, and I can respond to any questions any of the commissioners may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Commissioners, if you have any questions of staff, please use your raise hand button and unmute yourselves when I call on you. Commissioner Zick, floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Two questions. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for the presentation. First one is fairly simple. You indicated that the property owner has leased this site to Luxury Auto Lounge. So the property owner is the Walker Group Ventures. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And on the staff report, what I was a little confused about, and I just want to try to understand this better, it indicates that the applicant is Government Solutions. So does that mean Government Solutions is the entity that is going to be developing the two-story building that you referred to in your staff report? Or is Government Solutions related to this Luxury Auto Lounge?
Actually, Government Solutions is representing the property owner and is the applicant for both applications.
Okay. Part of the reason I had that question is because on handwritten page 9, the individual from Government Solutions indicates that they're the authorized agent of their firm and that they're representing the applicant for the permitting process. So it says they're representing the applicant. That makes me sound like they're somebody different than the applicant. And you're saying that they are, in fact, the applicant.
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, they are authorized to speak on behalf of Luxury Auto Lounge as their representative, as well as the representatives of the property owner. So there are three entities. It's Government Solutions, Luxury Auto Lounge, the operator, and Walker Group, which is the property owner.
Okay.
But Government Solutions is representing both of those entities, as well as the developer for the body shop.
Okay. Thank you for sorting that out for me. And then my second question, I'm referring to handwritten page 6 and the condition of approval that relates to the temporary conditional use permit. And I kind of want to understand this a little bit because in the past when conditional use permits have been requested, it's always been understood that conditional use permits run with the land. And there have been occasions when I have had a concern about that and would have been interested in there being some set period for the conditional use permit, maybe a renewal, like they have to come back in 2 years and renew and that sort of thing. And I can't recall the specific conversation I had when I expressed an interest in that, but just as a hypothetical question, can we issue conditional use permits that have a 2-year renewal requirement as part of a condition of approval? Is that something that we can do?
Chair, if I may, there's a section of the code that specifically outlines that a conditional use permit is to run with the land unless otherwise withdrawn, revoked, or is otherwise specified in a condition of approval. So it provides us some latitude in terms of setting a date related to conditional use permits, but I'd also like our city attorney's office to weigh in on the idea of a renewal.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Commissioner Zick, the concept of a renewable CUP for a term of years is disfavored. what we're faced with here tonight is simply a temporary use. And the zoning code provides, as Ms. Lee suggested, the specific authority to condition what would otherwise be a vested right that runs with the land, which has been done here. But providing a CUP that expires every 2 years unless renewed crosses a boundary that is not abundantly clear that it is in fact a temporary use. Whereas this specific use and this type of use is clearly temporary, and the authorization for that is clear.
Okay, and I appreciate the answer to that hypothetical. I think I probably have gotten an answer to that in the past, but it's a little clearer what you both are explaining to me. So in this situation where we're expressly conditioning a temporary conditional use permit, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the language. The maximum term of this temporary use is 1 year. It could be shorter, but the maximum term is 1 year. And I'm reading that correct, right?
That is correct, Commissioner Zick. It expires in 1 year unless it expires earlier because the property is being otherwise used and entitled.
Okay, because it's entirely possible the property owner something could happen. They may choose not to pull building permits for their development. And because this thing is going so well, or, things change. But regardless of what happens, 1 year is the maximum, and then this thing is over. This use is over. Okay. All right.
Unless it is extended.
Say that again?
Unless it is extended, it will expire in 1 year.
If it were to be extended, what would that come back before the commission?
It would have to come back before the commission, correct.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Thank you, Vice Chair.
All right. Any other questions, commissioners? I'm seeing no raised hand. Oh, Commissioner Colbert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have one question, and it's more so, thank you, Mr. Lee. Just for a clarification, I understand outdoor display. It's the and storage that is unclear to me. Is that just a part of the total title of the type of use, outdoor storage and display, or display and storage?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so there's not an additional type of storage being held on the site. It's just for basically for the vehicles. Okay, yes. And then I have one question. I think Commissioner Zick touched upon it as related to the duration of the entitlement, but in terms of second question, there was a piece that was called out on in the staff report on page 4, and I don't know if I heard it in the presentation again, but it states that vehicle repairs will be conducted off-site. There won't be any, during any period of this use, there won't be any vehicle repairs on site. If so, it would have to come before the commission because that would change the type of use that we're doing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my only 2 questions.
If you'll give us a moment, please. I believe we've lost Vice Chair Harlan. We're going to take a few moments to get him back.
Sorry, are we all back? Okay. Commissioners, sorry, I'm trying to get my screen back up here. Any other questions to staff? Okay, Mr. Lee, I have 2 questions. One relates to the parties involved in this. I think Commissioner Zick had asked questions about the owner, the applicant, and the applicant and owner's representative. In the permanent use request, which the zoning administrator had approved last week, who is the applicant for that project?
The applicant was Number One Collision, which is the base company for the Walker Group.
Okay.
They operate Number One Collision centers in Canada. Okay,
so they're the property owner has leased this property to another entity for a temporary use. Okay, yes, so my second question has to do with sequence. So that approval by the zoning administrator was issued last Thursday. So the appeal period doesn't run until this Thursday, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if that approval is appealed by Thursday, and we have, for argument's sake, approved this or taken some action on this particular temporary use, what happens?
Basically, it would be called up or appealed or called up for review. It would be brought before the Planning Commission for their consideration, and would also be a public hearing process, which means that it would take some time to do the noticing, agendize it, and so forth. So in other words, it would, I don't know if it would directly impact the approval this evening for luxury auto lounge, but it would stretch out the approval process for the Number One Collision development.
Okay, well, yes, please, Ms. Lee.
From our perspective, the 2 applications are separate and independent. Either one can move forward or not move forward independently of the other. Therefore, we don't see them as connected. So whether or not the permanent development is appealed or called up for review, the Planning Commission's decision, whatever it is this evening, would stand on the temporary use.
Okay, well, I asked because I think the way this is framed is that this is an interim use, and the only way there can be an interim use is if there's an actual future use that's been fully approved and contemplated. So in as much as they are independent, I think they're somewhat related, especially since this is a CUP and would run with the land. So I'm just offering that as an observation at this point. I don't know if Mr. Preziosi, is there any legal ramification to doing an approval in this sequence?
No, there's no legal ramification. The temporary use permit is specifically conditioned as temporary. That's the only right they're obtaining. They're obtaining a right, if approved by the Planning Commission tonight, to use it for up to 1 year. The Planning Commission could, if you wish to, extend it. For example, if there was an appeal of the primary project, and the Planning Commission decided it was justified to extend it, the Planning Commission to extend it for 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, however long the Planning Commission wanted to do that. But there's no automatic right of extension. Even if their project is appealed and denied, this temporary use permit will expire within 1 year unless it's extended.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. All right. One last chance. Any commissioners, any more questions of staff? Okay, seeing none at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite the applicants to our virtual dais and or applicant's representative, and state your name. And I have one question to ask first, which is, have you read the conditions of approval and do you agree with them?
Vice Chair Harlan, first, if I could have all the applicants, please raise your hand so I can allow you to speak if there's more than one, so I know who you all are. So the applicants for this public hearing, if you could please raise your hand.
Is that right, Julie?
Is 19492, are you the applicant for this item?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other applicants for this item?
No. Should be coming up.
Jason Cooper, are you part of this application?
Hi, Julie. Can you hear me
Hi.
okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. I represent Walker Group Ventures and Number One Collision. So I'm part of the that ownership group for the application for the permanent use of the land.
Okay, so Mr. Cooper, are you acting as the representative tonight?
No.
No, I believe she is also on a call. I'm not sure if they're having technical difficulties. I know that they are listening in right now, so there could be an issue with some microphone here. I know that Cora.
Yes, we can hear you now.
See when I mute, that's what I was worried about.
Okay, we can hear you. So if you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record and answering my initial question about whether or not you've read the conditions of approval and agree with them.
Okay, you can hear me. This is Coralie Newman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what was going on. I'm also here with Jay Dickinson. We joined together to be here. He is the operator that you've talked about that will operate Luxury Auto Lounge. I want to just thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and staff, Mel Lee and Jennifer Lee. Thank you for a very thorough presentation and staff report. We have read the staff report. We agree to all the conditions. The only one correction that we would like to make in the staff report that I didn't catch before, and I apologize, Mr. Lee, that I didn't, but on page 4, it says that Luxury Auto Lounge will be open Monday through Friday. They will be open Monday through Saturday. They will be closed on Sunday. And I would respectfully request that get into the record. That is important to their business to be open on Saturday. It's on page 4 in analysis. And I don't think I saw that in the conditions, Mr. Lee, if that's there, I missed it. We do understand that this is a temporary use. We agree to the 1 year. That's been made very clear to the operator that this is a temporary use, and that Number One Collision fully intends to move forward through the building permit process and build a beautiful facility, ultimately a beautiful facility here. But they felt that it was a good use of the property to put a temporary use. And part of it, as I've explained to one of the commissioners, this was an outcome of COVID because it took a tremendous amount of time. And it was serendipitous that both of these applications came before the city for final decisions in the same week, essentially. But because of COVID, it took us a long time to get Number One through the MCUP process. So felt that this was a good use of the property.
All right.
Use. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant? Please hit your raise hand button. I'm seeing none. Ms. Newman, we may call you back after we hear from the public if you need to respond to any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to open public comment. So Julie, if there are any members of the public who are attending and wish to comment, please let them know.
It looks like no public comments. Nobody has raised their hands.
Okay, I see that as well. Ms. Newman, is there anything more that you want to add? I'm not seeing a response here.
She's muted. Miss Newman, if you could.
I am muted. Okay. I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission and city staff for helping us along this process, and we look forward to having 2 successful operations in this location in the city of Costa Mesa.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion at this moment. Commissioners, does anybody have a motion?
I move that we find the application, find the project categorically exempt from the provisions.
Vice Chair Harlan, if I could please interrupt. Can you please close the public hearing
Yes,
as well? Before.
Yeah. Let's close that public hearing. I thought I had, sorry. Commissioner Colbert, continue. You've got a motion?
Yes, I move that we find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act per CEQA guidelines, section 15303, existing facilities, and approved zoning application 20-07, subject to conditions of approval with the modification to the analysis that the business hours will be Monday through Saturday.
Okay, do we have a second from Commissioner Russell?
Yes, I'm seconding.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Harlan, if we could have that motion again, I thought I heard zoning application. I thought I heard the wrong application number mentioned.
So 2007, go ahead, Commissioner Colbert.
Planning application 20-13, subject to conditions of approval. I was moving ahead of myself, Julie. Thanks for that catch.
You're welcome. Does a second concur?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Commissioners, any comments on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, Julie, can you for a voice vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Harlan?
Aye.
Commissioner Colbert?
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Zick?
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0 with Chair Jericho recusing himself and Commissioner Tourget absent.
Okay, thank you, Julie. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Julie, can you bring back the chair?
Yes, I am. He should be back. He should be back at the meeting now.
Okay. There you go. Mr. Chair, it's all yours.
Thank you. Give me a few seconds to get settled. Okay, Julie, could you read public hearing item number 2, please?
Public hearing item number 2, zoning application 20-0 for a minor conditional use permit to deviate from parking requirements for an individual and group counseling use located at 2001 Harbor Boulevard, Suites 200, 210, and 220. Please note that no public comments have been received on this item. This is a call to report any ex parte communications.
Commissioners, any communications to report? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Lee, you may present the item, please.
Yes, can everybody hear me and see the share screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
Great. Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the request before you this evening is a zoning application, specifically a minor conditional use permit to deviate from parking requirements due to unique operating characteristics for this particular use, which involves individual and group counseling in a 2-story commercial building along Harbor Boulevard. The property is zone C2, which is general commercial. It's a 2-story building, the major tenant in the building being Marvac Electronics. The subject use actually already occupies a suite of buildings on the 2nd floor. Here is the zoning designation for the property. As you can see, the abutting properties are also zoned commercial. Across Harbor Boulevard is C1. To the rear of the site, which is also accessible by vehicles, is zoned residential across Charlie Street. And here's a photograph that's showing both the first and second floors of the building. The second floor, of course, will be where the use is located. And this site plan shows the overall parking spaces. The development was actually approved with a parking deviation back in the 1980s. Normally, approximately 85 parking spaces would be required for this type of commercial building, but through the parking variance that was granted, 74 spaces were allowed, which is what is existing today. So this diagram shows the 3 suites that comprise the subject use. As you can see, the total square footage is approximately 3,200 square feet when you combine all of the suites. The exterior walkway is what you saw in the photograph a moment ago, which is basically this walkway that you see here. So that corresponds to this exterior area here and the suites that you can see along here. So the subject property, or the subject use, is a combination of individual and group counseling. I'll explain a little bit more detail later in the report, but the Suite A in Suite 210 is where the group counseling actually takes place. The remainder of the suites are either for individual counseling or for staff offices or break rooms and things of that nature. So the actual parking requirement is based on the square footage for the suite that's used for the group counseling rather than the rest of the uses throughout the 3 suites. The use is actually Yellowstone Recovery Outpatient Treatment Program. They actually established this use of the building back in 2014. And this was because group counseling office uses are not specifically listed in the city's zoning code. So the zoning administrator did a determination whereas group counseling would be considered similar to trade and vocational schools. So group counseling is a permitted use in the C2 zone. However, it does require a higher parking requirement than regular office use versus regular office use, which would require 4 per 1,000 parking. The group counseling, because it falls into the same category as trade and vocational schools per the ZA determination, would require 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet of parking. Because this site does not provide the 10 per 1,000 parking ratio, that is what necessitates the minor conditional use permit to deviate from the parking. Unfortunately, staff had issued a business license to the use without having them go through the minor conditional use permit. And because this facility is also licensed by the state, they have to obtain fire clearance as part of their state permits. And it was through this process, through the fire department inspection, that it was discovered that they were operating without the necessary minor conditional use permit to deviate from the parking requirements. So as I mentioned before, the only room where the group counseling takes place is approximately 400 square feet in size. So doing the mathematical gymnastics, that basically comes out to a total requirement of 15 parking spaces. Based on the current parking ratios for the building, they basically be allocated 11 spaces based on the way that the current parking is allocated throughout the site. It should be noted that their hours of operation for programs are basically 9 to 5. Basically, their group and individual and counseling programs take place during the course of the entire day. In other words, one group of individuals, clients, arrives at the site in the morning and are there throughout the entire day. Staff may be there some additional hours beyond that, but basically the counseling sessions consists of 10 to 12 maximum clients, and they are either transported there via a shuttle van or dropped off by parents or caregivers. So it's our opinion that this gives them the unique operating characteristics where, because there would be the only parking impacts will be relative to the staff and the van and the other people who are just there to drop off and pick up other clients, there wouldn't be an overall negative parking impact to the property or the surrounding uses. We did incorporate some specific conditions of approval that staff and participants not be allowed to park vehicles adjacent to residential properties. As I mentioned, this property does have a driveway access off of Charlie Street, which is directly across from residential properties. And another standard condition of approval we incorporate into these uses is for designated outdoor smoking areas. Once again, because of the proximity of the residential properties, it specifies that the smoking area shall be at least 260 feet away from residential areas, which is approximately half the length of the building, which is where the suites are located, and also 20 feet away from any openable windows or doors of adjoining businesses. I should also mention that there was a typo in the staff report with regards to hours of operation. I mentioned they have 2 sessions throughout the day. One is basically starts at 9 and goes to 3. And then the second one goes from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. It says 5 a.m. And so if the Planning Commission does recommend approval, those hours of operation need to be corrected in both the staff report, the conditions of approval, and the recommended findings. I also wanted to briefly point out that we did check with our our code enforcement division, as well as our police department. And our code enforcement division has not received any code enforcement complaints or violations relative to this use. And in looking over the police department calls for service to this property, there was only 1 call for service that was related to this specific business, and that was for a medical related issue. That was not for a specific, any specific criminal activity. So with that, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission find that the project is exempt from CEQA per the Class 1 categorical exemption, and approve the zoning application subject to the recommended conditions of approval as corrected with regards to the 5 p.m. versus the 5 a.m. hour that's referenced in that condition. So this concludes my presentation, and I can respond to any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, very much. Commissioners, if you have any questions of staff on the item, please use your raise hand button and take yourself off of mute when I call your name. And I see Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I always enjoy your reports and presentation. Always thorough, always easy to understand. I see your name and I always get good feelings about what I'm going to be reading. When I was looking at attachment 2, which is handwritten page 9, the letter from the applicant, the last paragraph goes into an explanation, I think from their perspective, as to why we're all here. And their maybe their words are not as precise as your words, but they say something a little bit different, and I wanted to understand it. So they indicate that they were operating with a business license and a letter from zoning. And then they indicate that because there was a delay in the fire clearance, they didn't receive the documentation for the clearance until 3 days after their deadline. And what I was curious about is a deadline for what? Did their business license expire? Or what was it that had a deadline that had expired?
I will have to defer to the applicants on that, but I'm assuming that in order to get their proper licensing from the state, they had requested the fire department inspection. So I don't know if that deadline was something that was imposed by the state, but
Okay.
I would have to have the applicant clarify.
Okay, and that could make perfect sense. From the city standpoint, from your presentation, what it sounded like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like because of an oversight, they on the I'll say the city's part, they've been operating without a minor CUP, and tonight's application is simply to bring their operation back under the correct administrative umbrella of the minor CUP. Is that pretty much accurate?
Yes, and I would also like to point out that the minor CUP is specific to the parking and not for the use.
Okay.
Because the use is considered to be a permitted use in the C2 zone per the zoning administrator's determination.
Okay, and then my last question, from your standpoint, is there anything that's changed in their operation from 2014 to what you describe here?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
It's still individual and group counseling.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, I will open the public hearing and ask if the applicant or the applicant's representative is present. And I see a hand raised. Please state your name and Julie, if we can have the applicant.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Cates.
Great. Yes, thank you very much.
So let me ask you, have you read the staff report and the conditions of approval, and do you agree with both of them?
Yes, we've met with staff on several occasions, reviewing the conditions of approval, the staff report, and like the resolution. And we're in full agreement with the staff report's recommendation, the resolution being proposed, and the conditions of approval.
Okay, so the floor is yours if you would like to make a brief presentation to the commission.
Sure. I've been working with Yellowstone, or the center here in this case, for many, many years. And they brought me on board to help assist in the process since I kind of interact with government and processing paperwork for conditional use permits and alike. I went and met with, I didn't meet personally, but met with Mel and his staff over Zoom meetings and kind of worked through the issues at hand, just kind of describing the business and the square footage of the suites and so forth. And what's before you today is that conglomeration of information from the property owner, electric, and then also from Yellowstone regarding their use permit and their square footages and alike. With that compilation of information, we've enjoyed our visitations with staff, the fire department, the different departments in this process of going through the conditional use permit process. We're available to answer any questions you might have, but we look forward to moving forward, getting our business license reinstated and getting the business up and rolling after COVID-19 is kind of run its course.
Okay, Mr. Cates, thank you very much. Commissioners, if you have any questions of the applicant, you please use your raise hand button. Take yourself on mute when I ask, and I see no questions of the applicant from the commission. So, Mr. Cates, I'm assuming you've shared what you want to share with the commission.
Yeah, I'm available to answer any questions, but
okay,
pardon.
I will then open public comments. If you would like to speak to this item, please use the raise hand option. If you're joining the meeting on your phone and would like to speak, please press *9. Ms. Colgan, let you handle the order of the speakers if there are any.
There are no public comments. Nobody has raised their hand.
Okay, we will then close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any further or any questions, because there were no initial questions, of the applicant? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, before I close the public hearing, commissioners, do you have any questions of staff? Any last final questions of staff? Commissioner Colbert, and then I have one, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Lee, I think this, this question, this is my famous question I always ask. And thinking about as we, read or update our code, our use matrix, is this one of the uses that will kind of be incorporated in the future? I think I've asked this before. I just want to make sure that we're thinking about this use because it keeps coming before us. And
yes, our intention is to include this use a little more directly in our next code update.
okay. And with that code update, I know a lot of these applications are pushed from the zoning administrator. Would that eliminate that, or would those still be, we'll still have the option to call them up, or the zoning administrator will potentially still send them our way?
The zoning administrator always has the ability to push a project to the Planning Commission for review based on her discretion under the zoning code. What is included in our code amendment, staff intends it to be a reflection of what the existing process and policy is. If at that time the commission would like to see some changes, that would be the time to note them as the code amendment is forwarded to the City Council.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Commissioner Colbert. So you actually asked my question, and so I'll defer any questions I have of staff at this time and close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there a motion? Please hit your raise hand button if you have one. Okay, Commissioner Perkins.
Great, thank you very much. I would like to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act per California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines Section 15301, existing facilities, and further move that we approve zoning application 20-07, subject to conditions of approval.
Commissioner Perkins, can I ask in the motion that you request the modifications to the findings and the conditions of approval relative to the hours of operation being from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Correct, with those modifications in the draft resolution, in the conditions of approval, and in the staff report to the 5 p.m. start time.
Excellent, thanks. I will second that motion. So there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Perkins, seconded by the chair. Any comments on the motion? Please raise your hand if you have any. My only comment would follow along with Commissioner Colbert's. It strikes me as a bit of a stretch that counseling services are lumped in with trade and vocational schools. And so I would think we would want to look at their use at some point when we do our zoning code update. Commissioner Perkins, I see your hand up.
And following on that same line, I also would like to echo getting this use in our land use matrix. I also think it might be valuable to include provisions regarding van drop-off, since that seems to be coming up again and again with these, that we seem to be saying we have van uses that are mitigating these effects. So seems like something worth considering when that comes down the road. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Julie, would you please call the voice roll call?
Chair Jericho,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harlan,
Aye.
Commissioner Colbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Zick.
Aye.
That motion carried 6-0 with Commissioner Torje absent.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioners. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. We will now move on to departmental reports. Public services report. I don't think Mr. B is here tonight, so I'm assuming we'll defer on that. Development services report, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few quick updates from the City Council's meeting last week. The City Council approved an item authorizing the city manager to submit an appeal of the city's RENA allocation. The due date for that appeal was today, and that appeal was submitted to a SCAG on the city's behalf. The next update is related to the council study session regarding short-term rentals. If some of you are able to watch that, at that study session, council directed staff to bring back a moratorium banning perhaps all or some portion of short-term rentals, while a long-term ordinance is prepared on that topic. So that's my report for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee. City Manager's report, Mr. Preziosi. I'm City Attorney's report, sorry. I elevated you.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion, but unfortunately I have no comments this evening, Chair.
Okay, very good. All right, Commissioners, thank you very much for your work this evening, and it's good to see all of you, and hope Commissioner Tourget is enjoying her brief time off. And we will stand in adjournment to the Planning Commission, regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of November 9th, 2020. Everybody stay safe and healthy. Thank you.